The fact is, you're not part of that group. You're never going to be part of that group. You are deemed as a token in many respects. And yes, you may work very hard, but it's sort of like, just because you don't have the same boats doesn't mean that you're not dealing with the same issues. And just because it was the Mayflower versus, the Middle Passage, it doesn't really, it's still the same journey to some degree, because you are still a slave and you're coming from Africa. And I mean, frankly, the heart of racism really comes from the fact that a lot of the issues are very similar. They just are in different forms throughout Africa and throughout Latin America too.
When I say Afro or African descent in Latin America, I'm not avoiding the language place, because in Latin, you have a language. That's what I say, Latin America, you have a language. So this is resolved. The second problem, when I say Afro-Latino, the problem in Afro-Latino is not, they're not putting together Afro and Latino like the cultural mainstream. No. They're putting Latino like the dominant culture. First, by the language, which is Spanish. Do you know how many languages African people have? They have, like in my country, only 60. How many African languages are speaking in Latin America? None. So the problem is, like, the dominant language is Latin heritage.
With respect to the term Afro-descendant, that comes out of the terminology that was adopted in Durban during the big race conference. I am not inflexible with respect to adopting the term Afro-descendant, okay, or Afro-Puerto Rican. But it should not be viewed as attempting to dilute the duality of my culture. I say that I'm Afro-Latino because of my blackness and also language. That's the only reason. But let us be very clear that my orientation is black. I don't try to play up or try to transform myself into a new being.
Class issue that you're talking about that we need to discuss as well. To the young lady, start the organization. If you can't find it, start it. Do not leave this room without meeting some like-minded people and start the organization. That's simply what you have to do. You are charged with doing this, and take charge of it. Don't wait for someone to form it. Make it what you want it to be and just go ahead with it. When someone addresses you and they say you're African, it is someone who is not knowledgeable of their history, and they have accepted the portrayal for a very long time of Africans in this country of being arrogant. On one extreme, it's a dichotomy. They're very arrogant, and then they're very backward because it's a heathen country. But they have this arrogance about them, and they come over here and they think they're better than. So when they say you African, this is the worst thing that they think they can say. Because they do not know the history. And it's very sad when we do that to each other. The internalized racism, pick up the post on a Sunday morning after a weekend. How many men have killed each other? How many women of color? We do this. We want to put Z on the end of nigga and think that makes it okay. We want to say things about our women in music, and we'll snap our fingers to it, and we'll buy it, and we'll dance to it, and we'll claim that we don't know what the words mean. And we're degrading each other. And so we have to make a stand. We've got to decide either it's right or it's wrong. And comes a time when you have to act what you want to be, and you have to walk the talk. And it's going to be up to this group. You're right, this is a safe haven. It's an academic arena. If you can't make the conversation here, okay, and you have to take it outside, because someone on 7th and T who may not have been as fortunate as the person on K Street may have the understanding that they realize we are all in the same boat. You can live in Mitchellville. Okay? You can live in Southeast, but at the end of the day, we all come back to it. We are of color in a country that does not value